Good day and welcome to the Jack Welch Management Institute Leadership Live, How to Build a Thriving Global Business webinar. We invite you to submit any questions in the Q&A panel on your screen. Please note this webinar is being recorded. It is now my pleasure to turn the call over to Dean Sippel, CEO of the Jack Welch Management Institute.
Thanks so much, KT, and welcome everybody. My name is Dean Sippel. I'm the CEO of the Jack Welch Management Institute. And welcome to our Leadership Live event. These events are designed to bring experts of practice to our community in a way that highlights real-world examples on how to manage, grow, and win in business. And we're very fortunate today to have Tariq Farid with us, the CEO of Edible Brands. Tariq Farid is the founder and CEO of Edible Brands, the parent company that includes Edible Arrangements, which is a pioneer and worldwide leader in high quality, artistically designed fresh fruit arrangements, which currently have more than 1,300 locations worldwide and over $600 million in revenue. In 2019, the company also launched Incredible Edibles, which focuses on extending the benefits of natural health and wellness by leveraging the superfoods and hemp CBD. Throughout his career, Tariq founded or acquired companies in technology, distribution, supply chain management, and established a charitable foundation. Additionally, Tariq is a member of the International Franchise Association's Board of Directors and was named IFA's Entrepreneur of the Year in 2009 and was included in the IFA's Hall of Fame in 2018. So no doubt he's done a lot over the last 35 years. So with that, welcome, Tariq.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I thought we'd kick off. Your story is a great one. And your journey started back when you were 17 years old, running a flower shop or working in a flower shop. Fast forward over the last 3 decades plus, kind of share with the community here today, some of the highlights along that arc from your journey from back then to today. Love to hear some of those highlights.
Yeah, so I got my first job more out of necessity. My family came to the U.S. in 1981, and by 82, you had to kind of help. And so I was about 13 when I got a job at a local flower shop in the neighborhood. It was just a great entrepreneur who supported everyone in the neighborhood and just learned a lot from him, Charlie Faricelli. And then, when I was 17, I was still in high school. My father saw an ad in the paper and said, "Hey, there's a flower shop for sale." It was actually a flower shop that had gone out of business and they were liquidating. And so we showed up and we bought it for about $7,000 with a loan from my father's boss, from Denise and Bill Holberg. And it was just history after that. And I think, the inspiration of different people, be it Charlie or others that came along the way. I didn't have any formal training on doing business, but I had a lot of examples to follow. And so most of my history in business has been following other examples, either read about them or look at others that have built a business. And so fast forward the flower business, we did really well in about a year, in 86. POS systems were coming out, or technology was now being adopted to different flower business, didn't have anything. So I started a company called Northeast Systems Group back then to go put POS systems in flower shops. And that became a pretty big business until 97, sold that, and then started Edible in 97, 98, and opened the first store in 99. And it really helped the last 15 years or the 10, 12 years of whatever I did between technology and retail in the flower business was pretty much the experience I used when I built Edible. So the first thing we started at that time, the whole .com craziness was around. So the first thing we did was built a website and didn't know how. I just had resources from the POS days, and we built our own POS system and kind of laid that as the foundation. And I think that was a very important thing of early adoption of technology. We're going to build it on technology. We're going to make it more allow the owners to focus more on the business and the customer instead of all the other things that go into it. And that's what helped us scale, where we went from a few stores in 2002 to almost 10 years later, almost 1,000 stores. So it's just been a phenomenal journey of just mentors and being on trend or ahead of the trend when it comes to adopting technology, and just saying, I just got lucky with a lot of people who just never said no when we wanted to do something. They always said, let's figure it out. So we didn't know much about websites, so we figured it out, and it worked really well.
How you mentioned the kind of one of the big starts was the generosity of that $7,000 loan. How did share some insights? How does one that had the experience that you did have, and outside of the generosity, how did that kind of come about? How did you make that pitch to get those friends to loan a 17-year-old $7,000 back then?
Yeah, and especially when my father's making $8.25 an hour, and his manager's probably making $12, $13 an hour. So him and his wife, they were neighbors of ours, and I think it was more generosity and more. I worked hard, and I used to have paper routes and have a job and all that stuff. And there's just, I think they're more kind of those angels that come in your life that just want to take a risk, because I'll think 3 times before I give a 17-year-old, be it my own kid, $7,000 to go do something, So what Bill didn't even, he didn't break a sweat. We turned around and said, look, there's a flower shop for sale. I've been working at a flower shop. We'll have to get need some money. And we didn't have any money. And he said, oh, no problem. How soon do you need it? I mean, so I try to practice a lot of that when I'm advising others, that's somebody had helped me at that time. And that was, it was a magical thing. We bought the store for about $6,000 something, had about $800 for inventory, went in and stocked the thing up on a weekend and was up and running on Monday. And then, I was doing $90, about $70 to $80 in sales. And I thought it was amazing because, I delivered papers, or I worked for someone that I made, I don't know, $3 and something an hour. And at the end of the week, I $90 a day times seven days. It was like, oh, wow, $800 a week. Wow. So it helps to not know numbers and not know, statistics and all that stuff. And then, now I just wanted to get to 1,000 or 500 a day in sales. And, along the way, my mother would be I would drop my mom off at the shop. And she would watch the shop when I was in high school. Then I would kind of show up at 1 o'clock and take over. So they were just those magical days where the base was set by Bill and Denise Holberg with that loan, but then my mom helped and others helped to kind of in this journey that I was starting. So that support group is very, very important.
Yeah, and also just a little bit more, because I found that fascinating. So you're being successful, had it now 2 or 3 or 4 locations, I think, at that young age, to your point, and probably beyond what you even had hoped to get at that stage. Yeah. And then out of necessity started to build, the POS to help become more efficient. What led you into then expanding that? If I remember the story, you actually grew and were obviously very successful with that for many years before you even started to expand and create edible arrangements, if you will.
Yeah, so the IT business became bigger than all our flower shops. So we had about 3 flower shops. And then we were building the 4th one, and I started to do the POS system. Everybody started to call and wanted to, put a POS system in. And the advantage we had was that we came from the flower business, so we understood the business. So when I would go to someone, I didn't have to sell. I just had to tell them what it does and how it makes life better. And I would walk out with orders, so we got to a point where, it was literally in my garage is where we built these systems, and we would build them over the weekend, and on the weekdays we'd install. And then, so that, there's a little magical moment that happened when I was 17. When I got to 18, I had 1 shop. I was running it. This gentleman, Leo, he had a wholesale business, and he owned 2 flower shops, and he wanted to sell a flower shop to me. So he just calls me and says, hey, kid, I like the way you work. You're a hard worker. I own these 2 shops. My wholesale business is pretty good. Buy the shops first and then buy the wholesale business. And I said, oh, well, I'm sorry, I really want, I don't have the money. And he goes, I didn't ask you for money. I just said, buy them, we'll work it out. And I said, I don't want 2. I said, there's only 1 of me. I can't really run multiple shops. And this was my first lesson in business. I'm 18 years old and I have this shop and I'm doing pretty good. And he goes, when I said, I can't buy more than 1, he kicked me out of his place and he kind of cursed me out. And he said, go away, come back when you're a horse owner, not a jockey anymore, because you're still a jockey. And I'm like, and I got a little offended. I'm like, Leo, you don't have to get upset. He goes, well, I'm teaching you a lesson. You're a jockey right now. You're good. You work hard. You have the right ethics. I think you will do great. But a jockey can only ride one horse. An owner can own many. So I'm giving you an opportunity that you can have multiple horses in the race. And that was like, by the time I drove back to my shop of picking up product from him, that flicked the switch. So after that, never looked back when it came to the opportunity to own an IT company. I knew nothing about it, but I liked computers. But to do it, it wasn't a struggle, because by then Leo had helped me change my thinking to say it doesn't really matter what you're doing, as long as you put the same effort in it, have some value-based system in and everything, and it worked really well. So that was that 18-year-old lesson I learned from a mentor at that point, who had multiple businesses, and so starting the IT business wasn't a struggle at all. But I think scaling it was the struggle, and it changed real quick. But it became one of the biggest businesses I owned at that time.
Yeah, one other idea in there, and what a great love the jockey and horse example. That's great.
Yeah, that's Leo.
And tough to get that kind of feedback, I know, and but some of those are just so profoundly important in one's career that it's great that you had somebody that actually gave you the candid feedback like that.
Yeah.
But within there, interesting, and I think a lot of people get this wrong in some cases, but you're running flower shops, you built the POS system, now you're going out and around, and I'm sure within some of your same markets, selling to other flower shops. Some would say internally, like, why are you giving away your secrets to your competitor? How did you think through that as kind of as a business model, or kind of sharing what was making you successful with your competitors, if you will?
I think that's short-sightedness. I mean, a lot of people will turn around and think I learned more by being out, because some of these were very successful flower shops. It gave me an in to go and automate their systems, and in the process, these were very experienced. I mean, I remember my Paul Muldoon from Wick's Flower Shop in Long Island was my first customer. The $3 to $4 million in sales in a flower shop. I never heard of a flower shop doing $3 to $4 million. It was like 3.6 million because our reports weren't above 900,000. So the POS system just, all the reports went haywire. But I learned so much from him as to, how they grew it, the whole focus on customer service. I got to practice a lot more of some of the things that I had found in the flower shop. Like they had a larger scale, so we can practice some of those things where I had smaller shops. So I think you learn more by going out, and you have an opportunity. My mom used to say something. She said that knowledge is like water and only flows downhill. So when you see somebody knowledgeable, lower yourself in front of them. Sit in their shadow, let that come to you. So that's what I would do. I would go there and, be it that they were doing things on paper and everything, but they had very successful businesses. And every one of the customers that I had, I learned from. And, there's two ways to do it. You could go to a customer because you want to make money, or you could go to a customer because you want to make their life better. And if you make their life better, you're going to learn from it. For my always thing was that I never tried to sell, because I was really never smart enough to sell, but I had certain knowledge that they needed benefit from. And then I wanted to learn how they built those businesses so big, because if they were affording a $20,000 POS system as a flower shop, they were pretty successful.
Yeah.
So that's who would be calling you. So I learned more. So I usually encourage people, go volunteer, go do some internship, whatever you want to call it, go sit in their shadow. You have to do that. That experience, you'll learn something in 2 weeks that would take you a lot of money and a lot of effort to try to learn on your own.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. We kind of stress internally and externally with our students is getting out there and see what others are doing, even if they're not in your field. You just, to your point, if somebody's doing something right, try to figure out a way to even go to their location, or try to find a point of contact that they'll share. You'll find generous people that are willing to share openly, and you just, to your point, you just learn so much by getting out there and asking. So I love that example. At our well, every organization has some kind of mission statement, and we at the Jack Welch Management Institute really stress the importance of a mission statement and how to bring that to life. And it's just not, the plaque in the hallway or some words that fill up the annual report at the end of the year, but it's much, much more than that. And literally we have almost a whole course designed around the importance of a mission. And just loved when I was reading your story and your mission statement. And for the group, it's, their mission statement is 3 little words, 1 big mission. And their mission is to wow you. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it was great, simplistic, but so powerful. How did you arrive at that mission statement, and how do you bring it to life? How do you keep it in the DNA of your organization, all these years? I think it would be a great story for the community.
So I think keeping it in the DNA has been the biggest challenge. How it came about is a small shop, month of December, cantaloupe and honeydew doesn't tend to taste too good when customers are ordering you. Your arrangements are made up this fruit, pineapple. Customers related to, hey, I go to a grocery store, pineapple usually doesn't taste too good. So customers come in, you're charging them $60 for this bouquet. And so the customers would come in and say, well, I want to order it, but I'm afraid that the product may not taste good, or the strawberries, not the strawberries, but the cantaloupe may not taste good. And so I came up with this line at that time just to get the orders, where I said, well, if the person who receives it does not call you and use the word wow, I will give you your money back. And they're like, are you serious? Yes, yeah. You just if they don't call you and say, wow, where'd you get that? Wow, that was amazing. Wow, we all enjoyed it. If they don't use the word wow, and I'm going to make sure they use the word wow from every aspect. And we never had any issues. And I think I had one customer call me once who had an issue. So that's what everybody's mission became in at our small little shop, that this product is going to someone. And we never really made an order by a ticket number. We always made it by a person's name. I have an order for Smith, so it was always that, like, it's going to a family, and you always had to read the card. What's the reason? It's a birthday. So you add a little element to it. You made sure that when the driver goes, says, oh, happy birthday. To make sure that reaction happened. That's where it started from. So then I wrote it on the wall to say, from now on, our job is to wow everyone, and my job is to wow you, the people that worked for me. And it worked really well. Fast forward 4 years, 5 years, we got to about 500 stores. I hire a CMO, I hire a management team, a lot smarter than me. And the first thing they attack is the 2 why. They say, well, you know what, this mission statement is really too simple. We need a proper mission statement. I didn't know any better. I said, okay, yeah, you guys know better than me, go for it. So they go and they spend a month and everything. They come back with this a plaque that got hung in at our entrance. It was something like, to make the world better, 1 fruit piece at a time, something like that. It was a pretty lengthy thing. I would look at it every day, and we weren't doing any of it. So after about 3 months of that plaque hanging, I was in a management meeting, and I asked the person who had written that mission statement, say, can you tell me what our mission statement is? And he couldn't repeat it. And I said, and I told him, I said, look, we're all going to go out. We're going to take that plaque off. We're going to burn it. And we're going to go back to the thing we used to do so well. It was simple. And the only mission was that when we're making a photocopy, printing a card on the phone with a customer, making a product, that it must have an element of wow. Unless the word wow is going to be disappearing out of the dictionary, that's what it's going to be from now on. So the first thing that happens whenever a new ad agency comes, the first thing they do is to say, well, we want to rethink that. I'm like, no, you can't. 2 things you can't do. You can't change the logo, and you can't change that, because in 20 years, many times it's been tried. So it's for us, it was born out of a necessity, and it was something that made us who we were in the first 5 years, because every staff, every employee, everyone that worked, from a driver to the person picking the fruit, the whole mission was that there must be a wow in it, that the taste must be there, the look must be there. So, and I always tell people, just stay true to it. Whatever you started in the beginning, those were the difficult days. That's when you didn't have any money to hire agencies. So sometimes you come up with a great formula, you don't need to change it. And I had the experience of people wanting to change it only to go back. And then when we start to deliver on it, it delivers back. It works. It works every single time when that's our focus with our customer.
That's great. And speaking of the customer and wowing the customer, you have a very customer-centric approach. You can just tell in your conversations. Kind of explain how so many organizations get this wrong, right? They say, again, like the mission statement, everybody says, yeah, our customer is number one, but a lot of the activities that you kind of see within the organization or new projects kind of forget that the customer needs to be the focus of this meeting. Like, how is it going to impact our customer? How do you how did you keep that customer first approach? Where did it come from? Is it just learning from that first flower shop? And secondly, how do you measure it?
Well, my experience on kind of customer, 7, 8 years old in Pakistan with my mom, you go to a shop. So my mom would go, I'll go shopping with her, carry the bags or anything. So there would be two places that there were, either a fabric store. And, there was this tradition in the small businesses that whenever they would measure a little extra. So if you said 2.5 meters, they would measure a little extra. And as a 7-year-old, I was just inspired by that. Like, wow, he's measuring extra. Second, that if you were buying some fruit, they'll put extra fruit in. They say, thank you for the business. And they'll put 2 extra pieces in and everything. And just for you being their customer. So that, and when I opened my first business, that's what I wanted to do, that you have to, add a little bit of it. And the second thing is we've always looked at customers, and it becomes difficult. And as we become bigger now, it becomes difficult that, that whole part of, that a customer is a blessing. That, in our family, there was a big tradition of that customer is a blessing, that when you go out and somebody takes their hard-earned money and they're going to spend it with you, you have to really take care of it. As a teenager, waking up in the morning was the hardest part. My mother would kind of wake us up and say, look, people placed orders with you. They had their hard-earned money they spent with you. You have to get the orders out. You have to take care of it. So it was ingrained, so I kind of saw it. It's tough to learn, at the beginning, but if you're in the right environment and under the, working with the right person, it's the best focus to have. And I've seen this where I've gone from a very tiny business to a large business where I had partners, and instead of sales or instead of customer being focused, EBITDA becomes the focus, profit becomes the focus. And I've always said that profit is a byproduct of doing great things, right? You have to kind of work hard on taking care of the customers, and they always come back and they always take care of you. So it's worked well for me, and any brand that I was inspired by, any of the leaders that I followed, that was the focus. And you have to either you have a great product that everybody wants, or you're going to have to be really good on your service. And so that people fall in love with your business and whatever you sell. So we've sold different things, be it in the flower business or the computer company that I had. For me, the focus always was take care of that person who's giving you the money. And in return, they'll always take care of you. And it's worked really well. And it works now more than ever, that what's the right thing to do. And that's how you decide, regardless of how it may affect your bottom line, because it will come back, and it always does.
Sure. Are there any tools or surveys or anything of that nature that you measure that to make sure you're getting that feedback from the customers or at scale?
Always. I mean, our complaint ratio within edible, we have some holidays that are an anomaly, be it when things get out of our control. Our complaint ratio has been more like 10, 12 basis points always. And this is managed. I've always had, one of the tools I've always had is that it's the training, right? It's the training, and it's harder for us as a franchise company because we have to now take 1,000 entrepreneurs and convince them that this is the mission. This is what we're going to have to do. It's become easier because of the web. So much of the business is web, so we can be a lot more responsive about it. I think if you ingrain it as a mission, it can't be something that just happens. You have to manage it. So first, you have to, set it in your training, set it in your product. So if the objective is that the reaction of the product, be it when people see it or eat it, has to be wow, you have to make sure that's what happens. And then I've always had this principle: give the customer money back faster than you take it from them. So if it takes you 3 minutes to take an order and take it from them, if they call you, don't question like, oh, we didn't get this. And we fail at it at times because we have entrepreneurs that worked hard. They'll sometimes question it. Just no problem. What can we do? How can, Can we send another product? Can we, give your money back or anything like that? So I think just some basic practices. And I've always believed that if you're busy trying to get compliments, you have to never really worry about complaints. A lot of people will turn around and run businesses and they'll measure complaints, not compliments, where I will sit in team meetings to say, well, tell me how many compliments you got. Don't worry, don't tell me about complaints, because if you're focused on compliments, complaints will never happen, because even the one complaining, you want to turn it into a compliment. So you're always going to have issues. You're always going to have failures. Is what you do with it. Some of my best customers were the ones where we messed up, and they remembered how you corrected it, and then they stayed with you forever, be it weddings or other things. So it's worked well, and it usually is as simple as, let's just go after compliments. Make sure the customer always tells you, oh, I sent it, it was great. Oh, everybody loved it. That's what you want to hear, not sit there and measure, our complaint ratio is only 2%, or it should actually be 0. So let's not get too happy about 2%. Let's worry about how many compliments we get. And that's worked really well for me from the beginning.
That's great. I love the don't chase the profit, but chase the customer, I think was one of your taglines I had read.
Yes, it's my mother, 17-year-old coming home every day complaining about not making enough money. And she turned around and she just said, well, stop chasing money. It runs really fast. Go do the right thing. It'll chase you. It was a kind of transformational moment that I got to stop complaining about them. I'm doing something wrong that customers aren't coming to me and placing orders, and I got to stop complaining about what's happening, go fix it. And it always worked.
That's great. I love that. And speaking of, growing and working with your franchisees, you've obviously built a great big set teams and diverse, 1,300 locations, I think 900 franchisees. I read you bring on something like 10,000 seasonal workers each year, and you had some great growth, definitely during this pandemic year at your headquarters. Let's kind of share your kind of framework or approach for hiring, developing, training individuals, from finding the right person to bringing them on board and kind of training them up to be successful.
I'll start with a disclaimer that I haven't figured it out. And one thing is, I think we all have to get to a point where we're never going to figure it out. I think we just have to put some practices in place. I've just been lucky of surrounding myself with people who have passion. So when I interview someone, I look for passion. Because everything else is trainable, right? You can train a person on how to make an arrangement. You can train a person on how to take an order, but that desire and that passion must be there. And I learned a long time ago that you want to tell people what will not work and what will work really well. So when I will sit with people, I will be totally transparent to say that if any of these following things are done, it's not going to be good. But if you do any of these things, whichever way you do it, it's going to be phenomenal. And it was somebody who told me, it was somebody who worked for me way in the beginning, who said something like, you never told me that. You never told me that will get you upset. And that's when I realized that, hey, I didn't tell her that don't be late. I don't like the shop opening late. Always open it on time, So I started to focus on that. So that's very important, being totally transparent. Number one. And second, that whole principle of, that if it's not working out, end that relationship fast, because a lot of times we will affect the rest of our team because we keep trying to change someone that is not going to change, which is hard because we've had exits, we've had let people go, and people will look at that and count as into it, the morale may be down because you let so-and-so go down, let it so-and-so go, but they weren't the right person at the team. So it's that whole Jack Welch, I think even one of his books, and then also the book on Good to Great, that the right people in the right seats, right? It is very, very important. And you will make mistakes. If you're hiring 30 people, you're going to make mistakes. And those mistakes you should correct as quickly as you can. And then at the same time, you're going to find some gems and take care of those gems, whichever way you have to. For me, it's very important, the transparency, at least at the management team, are the key people. And then spending a lot of time with them of talking about the tradition, the values, And I've always operated on this, with somebody, I had somebody working for me once who called it corny. And I volunteer that it is corny, that I've always followed certain principles that have always been true, be it on this, the promise. We call it the promise, to wow you. So we've operated on this principle of 5 Ps. And when I share that with the team members or anybody we're looking to hire, you'll either see a light bulb go off or they really don't relate to it, but they must relate to it if they're going to be successful in our organization because it's so important. So for us, those 5 Ps are, promise, product, places, people, and then purpose. And each one of those things changes, but those are always true, and we used to actually do a chant about it every week. Did we deliver on it? Are we wowing people? Are we fulfilling our purpose of kind of taking care of our neighborhood? So I think, finding people that match within those criteria is very, very important. And then if you don't, you part company. And if you do, you take care of the people. You compliment them. You meet them at their doorstep and kind of tell them how great a job they're doing, and you inspire. My job is to inspire and make resources available. Otherwise, the magic is really delivered by the team. And I've never figured it out. I mean, I'm now working with my daughter and my kids. I'm kind of they're asking questions, and I'll spend time to say there really isn't a science. It is a combination of art. There's a little bit of a science, but it's mostly an art. And you have to spend some time with people, work with people, and then you're going to have the ups and downs. Take care of them on the downs, take care of them on the ups, and hopefully the middle will take care of itself. So it's a lot of work, and I'm lucky enough that I have some people that have been with me for 27 years, so, and they're key people in the organization and everything. And we've just went from being in Connecticut and moved to Atlanta. That was probably the hardest thing we've done, but we were able to put together an amazing team that last year just hit it out of the park. So we followed those principles, we stayed true to it and everything, and it worked really well when it was needed most.
That's great. So really you called them principles, but really it sounds like they're the behaviors within the organization centered around those principles that tee up to your mission statement, which is
that's right. I mean, yeah, the wow is the center, right? So that's the promise, but your product must deliver on it, your place must deliver on it, your people must deliver on it, your purpose must deliver on it, because at the end of it, that purpose part is very important. So this year we had a great year. Now the whole team's thinking about how we're going to change the world next year. And that just may be that we're just going to feed some people. We're going to do something small, but it must be something that you do. So there must be some purpose, and that purpose has to be everybody in the organization, everybody at the stores, at the local level, others, be it you support food banks or whatever it is, you must practice it. So those 5 Ps we've been practicing. Every Tuesday we have a huddle, we talk about it, and this has been going on since the beginning. So I think that repetition, and then people believe in it at that point. Either they believe in it or they're not going to stay. And if they believe in it, it's magic what people can do when they get behind a mission.
Now, on that managing of the people, are those principles kind of baked into or part of the review process with franchisees and employees of how they're doing within the organization aligned to those principles? Is that a formal process, or is it?
Between the franchisor and the franchise, yeah, I mean, it has to flow all the way through, because even if you're taking a product, our stores are independently owned by a third party, right? A franchisee owns that local market. So it has to be throughout, including on vendors. So it's everywhere. And that's how you can kind of, once you do that, I had read something a long time ago that what you don't manage doesn't happen. So if you want to have great customer service, you better figure out exactly what needs to be done in order for that to happen. So it is managed all the way through. It is really, really difficult in franchising, and I'm sure it's difficult even in corporate-owned stores because we have people involved, and people are different. They have different, they have days where you're not feeling too, customer service oriented, for lack of a better word. So, but overall, the mission has to be understood by everyone. So this 5 P principle is including the franchisees, vendors, and everyone. And what we've done, what worked really well for us is that we've created a brand book. We'll talk about everything in that brand book, and everybody will get a copy of it. everybody sees it. This is what we believe in. This is what we want to do. And most people will deliver above and beyond, so it actually works out well.
That's great. I love the easy, to your point, easy to communicate and align everybody to it, and just continuously doing that. And you said a few things that I just wanted to highlight, because I think they're so important, that even with all your successes, the acknowledgement that finding and hiring the right people is tough. It's not easy. And even after doing it, I know Jack used to tell me, and he would tell large audiences actually, that I spent over 50 years hiring, and I used to be at about 45%. Maybe I got to about 60% of doing it right. But so one, I wanted to highlight that. I think it's such a truism. And two, love the concept that you say, once you get it wrong, move fast for both the organization and the individual, because there's nothing worse than having somebody having to work or do a position or a job that they just don't want to do. So getting to that place and being fast, I think, is so key. Appreciate you sharing that.
Which is really hard. I mean, you're making a decision on another person. It's really, really hard. But when you're focused on the organization and a larger group, you're not really helping the person if everybody's talking behind their back. If everybody's thinking, it's best to just be authentic, have that conversation, have it early. I've found most people to be relieved when you have that conversation, and then you can help the person, right? Otherwise, instead of waiting for some kind of a crisis, and I think only in TV shows you're fired seems good, but it doesn't really work in real life. When you know people and you're trying to create a culture of a wow, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, no, I just love that. And we hone in on that so much every day. It's just, how do you have candor in that conversation and let people know where they stand? Give them a chance if they're not displaying the 5 principles that you have, and give them a chance. But if they're still just not coming around, tell them, so they know that they're at risk, or that you can help them, move on to something better if it's not the right fit. I think it's just so important. So
and I mean, you have a lot of attendees here. I will tell you the where I notice where people tend to not have that conversation is with partners, where they'll go through this difficulty, and eventually the whole business gets risked instead of having that conversation. So if you set up that culture from the beginning of having that conversation of kind of reconciling every week to say, hey, there's things that you're supposed to do that you didn't do, that's affecting the business, that's affecting me. Once you create that culture, that becomes very easy. I've known many people that the businesses at the end fail because they tend to have lack of communication within the owners or within the key stakeholders. So I think if you start to practice it there, it's very easy to practice it throughout.
Sure. Yeah, speaking of this year too, COVID-19, it's impact business in so many profound ways that hardly anybody probably had planned for, if you will, in the areas of supply chain management and customer relations. Everybody remembers you couldn't find cleaning supplies, back in late March. What were some of the biggest threats and disruptions that Edible experienced during the pandemic?
The same thing. Majority of our products, so we have a supply chain company called Berry Direct, so all the products come from overseas. I just like everyone else, I got this wrong. We had factories in China we were buying from. We knew in December this was happening in China, and I don't know, and I still kick myself. I have no idea why I thought this wouldn't come here. We're going to handle it. It's not going to be an issue. I thought it's only in China. We saw what was happening in those factories. So I got that whole part wrong. But at the same time, I had great team members that listened to those factories and started to pre-order. Like, okay, you know what? Double the order. If you're saying, we don't think it'll affect us, but double the order. So it was, again, and especially when you have some team members who are just very paranoid that, it doesn't hurt. Let's just see what happens here. So we saw, we were having our best 6 months, best Valentine's Day, and then suddenly, we just fell off the cliff. And so the initial reaction, and this is very, very important. I think being going through 2008 helped for us because everybody tends to think edible or our products are more luxury. So people aren't going to order when the economy gets bad or people are feeling any kind of financial constraints. We saw the opposite happen in 2008, that, as people tighten their belts, that, they wanted more of a sensible product. So food becomes a pretty big go-to gift. But at the same time, we had gone on TV, we started advertising. So when this came, when those first few weeks came, we went out and said, we need to go start advertising. We need to get ahead of this. We think more people are going to pull back. We need to get aggressive. And that worked really well, even though a majority of our system didn't want to do that. Majority of the franchisees said, well, let's just ride this out. I don't think you ride anything. Or when you're riding, then you're letting somebody else make the decision. So I don't think you ride in business. This is not a train. Either you're driving it or you give it to someone else to run it. So if you're going to do it, you better drive it and set the destination. So the team pivoted real quick. We saw a big issue in March, April, but by the time Mother's Day came around and June came around, we were seeing numbers that we hadn't seen since inception. So we, and that with that, we had our two channels, right? We always had the e-commerce. We had built our company from e-commerce point of view, and we had our own delivery fleet. So those two Ds worked really well for us. And anyone who had that, it's just a matter of scaling up as quickly as we can. And then we did the pivots that we had to. We were delivering whole fruit to people's homes. We were losing money on every package, but that was just the way of taking care of the customer. That, hey, people are home. If somebody wants to place an order, we have fruit, we have vans. So let's do that. And as we did it, people placed orders. Those same homes that got a $19 box of whole fruit that we were losing money on every one, they would call back and say, well, I didn't know you were delivering. So yeah, can you send something? I can't go visit so-and-so. And then suddenly the store started calling like, hey, I'm getting orders. As we deliver one, I get orders. And people were home. So I think with that whole pivot or being ready, you can get scared, you could sit back, you could kind of try to ride it out, or you can get ahead of it and do whatever needs to be done to go take care of the customer. And in return, this is when my own team was saying, hey, that whole principle, take care of the customer, they'll always take care of you. It worked. And it worked really well for us. And it continues. A lot of pivots. We went into cheesecakes and cookies and other items at that time and everything, because there was an opportunity, and that whole business grew, and we did well with it, but it was a lot of hard work. The owners had to stay open. They had to put in a lot of those procedures in place for safety on how you would do delivery and all those things. And we had to get 1,000 franchisees to tool up for that. But at the end of it all, that paid off really, really well.
Yeah. Did you have any disruption to the supply chain? It seems like you were able to keep the customers happy. Did you have to make big changes there, or did it just come back for you?
It came back, and luckily we had gone through this previously with SARS and other things that we had protocols in place that we always have to have a backup. So the backups kicked in. So as the virus kind of spread from east to west, we were able to move around South America and other places to do some fulfillment. And just having the right team members at that point helped. So I think the team was way ahead of me even on this, where we started to place early orders, and this is mostly dry goods for us. I mean, our skewers and other things that we that are manufactured that had to be in and had to be in advance. So with that, we lucked out that we had infrastructure in place and always had a contingency in place, but never thought it'd be this big. We thought the disruption would be a few weeks, month, or something like that. Didn't think it'll go on a year and we'll see a second wave. So I think having a plan, and a plan that you practice and you spread, some of those things around instead of just one area or one supplier, that helped a lot. And I think that diversity, and we've had that from the beginning, that we always have to have 2 or 3. So that helped a lot in getting product to our 1,000 stores as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's been definitely a challenging year for everybody, and how to pivot and manage that change and kind of selling it across the organization is just so key. And congratulations. It sounds like your model held up on your mission and principles, in some big change, and then speaking of change, it's just a scary word for a lot of leaders and employees. You're really always stuck in this reacting to it? How do you do it? Or you get your own internal biases. Oh, we've always done it this way. You hear quite a bit. And then there's external shifts, outside, especially this last year, either social conditions or internally. How did you initially react to the cultural and regulatory evolution of the term edibles, which you essentially own? And nowadays, that term means a lot different than it did 10 years ago. That's a big change. How'd you react to it? What did you do? Did you embrace it?
Oh, I reacted wrong. No, I reacted. So I had all these people after me to buy the company, and somebody said to me, well, your brand has a secondary meaning, and I didn't understand for a little while. And when I heard what California and Colorado was doing, I was actually initially going out and fighting it, hired a lobbyist, going out and saying, well, you really can't, you can't do this. And somebody said to me, this is someone said, look, always look for opportunity. And I've always said that you mitigate risk, but you always chase opportunity. You look for opportunity. So we spent some time looking at opportunity, that within this, is there an opportunity? And the opportunity that we found in it was, about 10% of the people may recreationally want to get high using some kind of a food product that has, let's say, marijuana in it. But 99% of the people are looking at it from a health point of view. Is there a health benefit? Will it help me with this? Will it help me with that? And as we looked at that, we saw an enormous business opportunity, that this is an area that we can use our franchise model, we can use our technology experience, we can use our logistics, we can use that whole part of all natural. We're going to always stay with fruit, and everything has to be good for the consumer. That we think there's an opportunity to participate, and that's where the Incredible Edibles brand came out of, where we started to, and then we went into the supply chain of trying to understand CBD, low doses of THC, whatever it's going to be, of how would it work on food, and opened up. So we haven't opened any. We have one store, and we'll be opening our second store because this thing is such a changing landscape. But it was a great learning for the whole team, because even a lot of parents who looked at it and just saw the threat, like, how are we going to do this? We have to stop this. This can't be. Yeah, this is bad. This is horrible. I can't believe government's passing laws that you call it edibles. Isn't this the same problem as Joe the Camel? We had this advertising on cigarettes, and then we had to take it back, where there was an opportunity to kind of take the higher ground. We're going to participate in it. We own the mark, and in it, we're going to go after CBD. We're going to go after health, and it's many more things than CBD. There's many other things, and out of that was a treat concept or a QSR concept that we're launching, which is like a cafe, which would be, it'll have fruit. It'll start with fruit, chocolate, other things, but it's a cafe where it has infused drinks or products, shelf-stable products that are all related to health. And you see the big opportunity, but at the same time, there's a lot of work that has to get done. Sure. So we've been mostly focused on that work. And then this change is the same in edible. We were making whole fruit arrangements, and from there we started to go into other baked goods and to grow that business, and you have to evolve the brand. So I've always had, this long time ago, I started to write this list on up to 13 items that, these are the things that I believe in, and these are the things I want to hand to my kids one day, and I will sit with my team and I share with them. And one of those items is that constantly change. I mean, every single day, just when somebody tells you we're done with this, the next question is, okay, how are we going to make it better? And the team has just gotten done of launching cookies, and you're like, well, how are we going to make better cookies? How are we going to make cheesecakes? How do we do this? And so it's just in your brand, if your logo, how do you make it better? How do you make your marketing better? How do you do all that? And companies that do that, or individuals or leaders that do that, they always stay ahead of the trend. And people know that, hey, this company or this group, change is big for them. They constantly want to evolve, which is, what Amazon has done, right? I mean, they're not only flying packages, they're delivering packages, and it's their own fleet. And so that they're touching every aspect of what they do. So I think with that part, and so from that point, when the edibles concept came out, or the Incredible Edibles, the concern was what we saw happening, not necessarily the part of how we're going to participate in, because the day we decided we think there's an opportunity, then it was easy. So you put a team together and opened up an office in Connecticut, and research scientists, food scientists, and others, and started to do that. And we see a good opportunity head on this.
Yeah, that's great. And you had great advice. I read or listened to it on one you when facing this change. And again, you openly said you had it wrong and your reaction was very negative. This is bad. But somebody gave you some advice and used the kind of a tsunami kind of advice, kind of jotted down in my head. If you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah. So it was a policymaker that I kept complaining to, and after a while, and he said, well, look at this as a tsunami or a wave. If you think it's a tsunami, and he goes, it's coming. It is a tsunami. If you think it's a tsunami, it's coming. Get out of the way. But if you look at it as a wave, you better get your surfboard and figure out how to ride it, because it's going to be a fun wave. And so the whole part was this whole part about fighting it. You can't fight it. You're going to have to figure out either survive in front of it or thrive in front of it. So which one is it? Pick your battle. And that was kind of the aha moment for me, that here's a person I've been going to for about a year, complaining about, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe we're putting this into law. And they say, well, this is happening, and this is being voted in by the customers. So you're all customer centric. This is customers voting it in Colorado. It's not, coming out of anywhere. So I think for us, that was a defining moment to say, we got to stop fighting it. Is there an opportunity? And that's when we started to pursue the opportunity part of it.
Yeah, that's great. Managing change, again, everybody wants to, I feel a lot of people just don't want to accept it, but it's so important. And definitely if the world outside of your own organization is changing at that speed and you're more complacent with what you're doing, you don't have very much long to kind of stay around in business with that. So change is so important, embracing.
Yeah, and it's tougher retailers never had the terms of agile and project management or anything like that. So part of the thing of, I used to do IT, so you understood the terminology, product manager, you have to have people, and there's a different type of change management. So retailers have always struggled with this, right? You'll put a sign up and you don't want to change it. You get used to the colors inside your store, and you walk in every day. To you, it looks the same. To you, it looks fine, but you kind of get used to it. So that's why you need that outside opinion of what needs to be done. And we do that a lot. We'll look at it and constantly, push the people to change it and everything. And the other thing is, as a leader, and you have a lot of leaders on this call, as a leader, if you make it part of your culture, and that's why I was sharing that whole part of, I think the second item on my list is change and constantly improve things every single day. And it's just, when you look at something, always look at it with the eyes of how could it be better? What can we do to make it better? I think if you do it, then it spreads throughout the organization and people start to look at it. And what they're bringing you is a better idea, instead of just kind of talking about the issues, or we're seeing complaints here, or we're seeing issues here, or we're seeing a problem here. They're bringing you a solution.
That's great. So let me shift. We had a lot of questions come in. I got a few from some of our students. So we got a few minutes left here. So I'd love to have you share. But about 20% of our students and alumni live outside of the US. Walter Calderon is one who's managing a global workforce. Any advice you could share on aligning different cultures as you work globally through your franchisee, or just from even your own personal experience?
Yeah, so we have a team in Pakistan, we have a team in India, we have a team in Ukraine, California, Connecticut, and Atlanta. And I will tell you this, what we're doing on Zoom right now, this has been magical. I've been trying to integrate Teams or other technologies for the teams to talk and to get to know everyone, and it was very difficult. So I think one thing to do is, we do a Tuesday huddle. It's existed forever. There are different people that have come in and maybe skipped a few weeks or anything, but we've never skipped a week. It's at the same time every day. And when we designed it that even team members overseas can join it, where it's at a certain time. So I think just celebrating together is very, very important. So at birthdays and other things, what's happening, let them share the stories. And that's worked phenomenal. And first thing is, a lot of times people will say we have a global team, but it's really not a team. You never really know who is in India or who is in Colombia. You don't know anything about them, where now in these technologies you can create where every team member can participate. You can write these things. So what has happened this year with this whole Zoom and this distance connection is phenomenal. So I think it's just made it a lot easier. Sharing and sharing different things as you go to the different offices and everything. It is going to be global. Our teams are going to be spread out. I think leveraging technology and letting everybody know that this is how we're going to work. My head of HR is responsible for every person globally. They're not head of HR for the US, they're head of HR for global because our teams fit everywhere. Our head of finance is in charge of everyone globally, and they have to understand how that market is different. How do some of those things work? And if you're not spreading out globally, you're going to have challenges, especially as people are not moving around as much. So I think it's just one, how do you huddle them together? And it's just become easier as of this year, because we'll get 300 people on a call and everybody's there and anyone can raise their hand and talk. And we encourage them to talk. And now they're doing it on video. So I think, Walter, I think you said Walter, that's just become easier now, Walter. And there's no excuse anymore. Before there was an excuse, and now everybody, and then as of last week, we made it mandatory that everybody must join in a video so you can see them. It's a pretty phenomenal, where people almost feel like that they met, where we were taking trips before and going out and everything. Now everybody knows everyone. And this year has been, more of my team has come together than ever before, where they know, and they'll use an example of so-and-so is getting married. And this person is 7,000 miles away. And somebody in Atlanta is talking about that, and which is really cool. And I think so it's become a lot easier. So it's not difficult anymore. It's just a matter of doing it.
Great. One more last question. This comes from student Michael Blue. You shared a little bit of it earlier, I think, for one example, but what's one of the most challenging pieces of feedback that you received in your career, and how did you react to it?
Look, whenever I've received nothing but challenging feedback, because I always go seek people that are going to give me challenging feedback. I consider mentors to be like, personal trainers, that they're going to want you to do 3 more push-ups that you just don't have the energy to do. And you may hate them while you're doing the 3rd push-up, but you know that I'm the one who went and hired you. I'm the one who's asking you to push me. So my best mentors have been the ones who've told me, I'm sharing a story with them, and they'll say something like, I remember I was sitting with Fred DeLuca and I'm sharing an idea on a product I'm launching. He goes, that sounds disgusting. And not even like, well, tell me more. It's just like, blah. And I sat there, and my brother was with me, and he got very upset that, why did Fred do that? I said, well, no. Let's think about, where is he thinking from? Why does he think that way? Because he's been, he owns 38,000 stores. We own, 700 stores. So there's some angle that he's looking at that he said that. And by the time I remember we drove out of his driveway, we're getting on the highway. By then we're shutting that whole project down, because we got it, we understood. So you're supposed to, you want to get a mentor that gives you tough feedback. If somebody sits there and just tells you great, then you're just getting a validator. You want a person to have you push and have you think different. So how do I react to it is, I listen and I approach it from their point of view, the same way when a customer is complaining to you. A lot of people will turn on and become defensive. They're like, well, we haven't had any other complaints. Well, that's not how you gauge that this customer has had an issue. Go take care of this customer. So with that, the same way as into, why is this mentor saying that either they don't understand something that I've explained, or I'm not getting it. And most times I wasn't getting it, because they were way ahead of me. And with that reaction, I was able to pivot, change, or even say, tell me how I can improve. And they'll usually either give you names or say, call so-and-so, try this, and stay away from that. And usually their advice tends to be very short. They're not going to spend a lot of time with you. My 15-minute, a half-hour lunch with a mentor was more valuable than years of doing something on my own, where they'll just tell you, well, try this and call Ed, Ed will help you. That type of stuff. So I think with that, it's more how my reaction has always been, I want to learn more and how do I fix it?
Thanks so much. And on behalf of the Jack Welch Management Institute, the 1,000 or so folks that were able to hopefully join today, thank you so much for your time, sharing your story, your practices, and congratulations on what a great journey. And I'm sure there's going to be much more that we're going to be able to read and watch as you grow, continue to grow and expand and change. So again, pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for your time, Tariq.
Thank you, Dean, Megan, Farid. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for this opportunity.
Great. And thanks everybody for joining today. That concludes our session, and hope everybody has a great holiday season and start of 2021. Take care, everybody.